Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about nutrients for my hydroponic system for my peppers, as you can see growing in the background there. It's in a Dutch bucket system. I've got a reservoir and it recirculates the nutrients every couple hours. So this is basically my feeding schedule for my peppers I'm going to go over with you today, and then I'm going to show you what I do for my nutrients every couple of days. This isn't going to be hyper specific, but I'm going to try and give you a good idea of what I do to get just amazing results from my super hot pepper plants. This year I've got reapers. Everything you see back there is a Carolina Reaper, so definitely one of the more finicky plants when it comes to growing. But I think I've dialed them in as far as getting really good production, good growth, good health, and sustainability with the plants. So what I'm going to show you real quick is just how I set up and do my feeding for the plants. Right now we are in flowering cycle or bud cycle with peppers growing, so I'm on my secondary feeding, but I will talk to you very specifically of how it differs from the vegetative period of growth, from basically seedling until you start seeing flowers or buds on the plants. So the tools that you need when you're dealing with hydroponics, you want to be really specific about your weights of nutrients. Your different pieces of the puzzle are all I do it by weight to volume of my reservoir, and there are great calculators out there online. I'll link into the description everything I'm talking about today, from where I get my nutrients, the nutrient calculator that you can use, and other bits and pieces that you'll see me talk about today. But first of all, you need a scale, because we're going to be very specific about the amount that we put in there. I just got one of these little pocket scales that goes to the gram. Mine's really dirty right now because I've been using it the last couple of years, but this is going to be your main tool as far as other than your nutrients here. I also have a funnel, and I have a cup that I weigh everything on. So I'm just going to go ahead and zero out the cup so I know exactly what the weight of the nutrients are, and then a jug to mix up your concentrate, which you will then dump into your reservoir tank with the water. So I'm going to start off with a base nutrient. This is going to be for a 25-gallon reservoir, which is going to be feeding the Dutch bucket system here in the background. That's all I'm going to talk about today. I'm not going to talk to you about the towers and how I feed those, but it's basically very similar, just a little bit less in concentration. So we're going to talk about the big system in the back. So a 25-gallon reservoir is what I'm making my concentrate for today. So I'm going to start with my base nutrient. A lot of people can use Master Blend, which is a proprietary blend out there. Some people use Miracle Grow. I've found on a website called hydro-gardens.com to have a specific blend for peppers and herbs that works just amazingly as the nutrient base. Nutrients are delineated by the nomenclature NPK, nitrogen, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And the percentages are the numbers that you see. So if you see a 20-20-20, which is a good all-around, all-purpose fertilizer, that's 20% nitrogen, 20% potassium, and 20% phosphate. So the NPK on the pepper blend that I use is an 11-11-40. So 11% nitrogen, 11% potassium, and 40%, 11 nitrogen, phosphate, and then 40 potassium. So this one I'm going to measure out at 60 grams. We're going to do that real quick here. 60 grams for 25 gallons. And during growth phase, the vegetative phase, we need a lot of extra nitrogen in there because pepper plants tend to be really, really hungry. And what I'll use is calcium nitrate, which is a 15.5 nitrogen 0,0. And it also has 19% calcium in there, which plants need as well. But that higher nitrogen is what I'm going for to make up for the lack of nitrogen in my relative lack of nitrogen in the base nutrient. So this one, during vegetative season only, I would do 60 grams. So the same as the base nutrient would be 60 grams of the calcium nitrate. But we're in flowering right now, and I cut that down to about 20, somewhere between 20 and 30 grams. I usually go about 25 because I've got a lot of extra plants in the system this year. And then I just toss that in there because we're in flowering right now. I don't need as much nitrogen, and I'll talk about that in a minute. All right, and I'll just cover that up. Give it a good shake. The great thing about the calcium nitrate is it is pretty soluble, so it dissolves pretty quick. And you want to make sure you get this nice and shaken up, not only to incorporate the different nutrients, but you want it to become soluble. You want it in solution rather than bits of crystals or what have you. All right, the next nutrient that I do for the entire season is magnesium sulfate, or otherwise known as Epsom salts. You can get these just about anywhere. I get big bags of Epsom salts at Costco for really, really cheap. You want to make sure you want to get the unscented kind, or anything with any additional stuff. I know a lot of people use this for bath soaks, which is really nice. But you want just the pure Epsom salt. And again, we're going to do the Epsom salt at 30 grams for 25 gallons of reservoir. So I've done my base nutrient, which I'll do during vegetative and flowering, at 60 grams, the 11-11-40. Again, that's the Hydro Garden proprietary blend. You can use other brands, other concentrations. You just have to adjust your numbers as far as the other nutrients that you use, and there are great, like I said, great calculators out there that'll help you figure that out. And then for growth, vegetative with the calcium nitrate, I do 60 grams, and I dial that back when I switch into vegetative or flowering phase. I'll go down to 20 with the calcium nitrate, and then for both flowering and vegetative, the Epsom salt, I keep at 30 grams. So now that's basically your nutrients. So for flowering, or excuse me, for vegetative, that's basically all the base nutrients I put in there, and I'll tell you some other things I put in there as well. So now, since we're in flowering and I cut back on the nitrogen, what I really want to do, since the peppers, when they're growing, is really push a lot of phosphate and potassium in there, because that's what's going to help you develop really big, really oily, just heavy peppers. Not only that, but you also maintain a lot more of your flowers. You won't have as much flower drops. So rather than 1 or 2 peppers per node, you'll get just clusters and clusters of peppers. And I'll throw in some images of what I see by the year. And sometimes I get so many peppers on a branch that the branch will snap under the weight of the peppers. So that's why you see all the string and stuff in there, is to kind of armature the pepper plants so they don't fall over on themselves. So what I use is Growmore's Hawaiian Bud and Bloom. This is actually developed for the cannabis industry, but it's a 5-50-17, so 5 nitrogen, 50 phosphate, and 17 potassium. That 50 is really gonna help, again, those peppers just grow to massive sizes. And I do 5 scoops or tablespoons. It comes with its own scoop, but it is a tablespoon. 5 tablespoons for the 25-gallon reservoir. The reason I don't mix this in with the other solution is you don't want to crowd your concentrate with too much gunk in there, as it'll start to recrystallize, or the nutrients themselves will start to interact in ways that you don't really want when they're highly concentrated like that, versus when they're in solution with the reservoir. they don't interact in such aggressive ways. So that's why I do this one second. That, my friends, is step one. I'll be right back after I set up for step two. I'll show you the other nutrients I add for the hydroponic system. All right, so in addition to all of the solid nutrients that I dissolve into concentrate, I also use two solutions. One is a seaweed extract that's really good for root development and just giving a lot of those micronutrients in there. And then the plants, the peppers, nightshades really need a lot of calcium to kind of keep those the leaves and the photosynthesis and the chlorophyll nice and strong in the plants. And it also prevents blossom end rot, which you'll notice at the end of the peppers, they just start to get crinkled and rotten. And you also notice a calcium deficiency in the plants when the leaves are really crinkly and like wrinkled up and just don't look so good. So CalMag, this is Phos Pro CalMag, or you can use CalMag Plus, which is another option out there. Basically adding calcium and magnesium into the solution of your reservoir. So for the CalMag, I use a little more than, I use about 250 milliliters, which I use my trusty little graduated cylinder here. A little more than 250 milliliters right into the reservoir. All right, and that's going to be enough for the next couple of days. You just got to make sure you mix up your concentrates here. You don't want it to be all sedimented out at the bottom of the container. I get these from my buddies at Grow More, who do an amazing job with their nutrients. So this is the seaweed extract, and I do about half the amount that I just did of the CalMag. So roughly about 150 milliliters of this super concentrate. This stuff is like molasses. It's really thick. And I'll toss this right into the reservoir. All right, so at this point, I've added basically all the nutrients that I'm gonna need for the next couple of days, and I'll get into the schedule of how often I do this in a minute here. But there are two other things that I need to make sure I do to keep this a healthy system. Number one is I add 35% food grade hydrogen peroxide. This stuff is really heavy duty stuff. It's not the 3% stuff you get at the drugstore. I will put the link in the description. This stuff, the reason I add hydrogen peroxide to my hydroponic system is twofold. Number one, it's a great oxygenator for the roots. It helps get added oxygen into the root system and really helps the growth of the plants and maintain the health. And it's also a great sanitizer. It kills fungus, it kills bacteria in the system that you don't want in there. So I just toss in usually about 125 milliliters of this stuff into the big tank. Now I wouldn't recommend you start out with that amount. I usually start off a little less and I grow my volume until they're sort of acclimated to that concentration, which takes a couple weeks to get there. But we're at that point in the season now where I do it every time I feed, and that just kind of helps. Oh, and the third thing, it also helps degas the chlorine gas from the tap water system. So I'll do my 35%, I don't know if you can see it, 35% hydrogen peroxide. It is food grade. I get this special ordered and sent to me. They do recommend wearing gloves and eye protection because it is a very caustic chemical at this concentration, but I'm not too bright, so I just do it freehand. And I've had burns on my hands from it, so. Last but not least, there's one thing that you got to do every time you add nutrients and throughout every couple of days is you want to check the pH of your reservoir. You want to check out how much acid is in there if it's too alkaline. You know, the plants have a very specific range of acidity that they like to be, which is about in the neighborhood of 5.5 to about 6.5 pH is a good window to work with. And I use basically this General Hydroponics pH test indicator. What you do is you get a little sample of your water from your reservoir. You put a couple of drops into your little test tube, and it has the color indication that tells you what the pH is. Now you can use, I've used pH meters, I've used test strips, I've used different types of the solutions, and I found this just to be the quickest, easiest, and fairly reliable indicator of where I'm at. Since I've done it so much, I don't need to bring out the color chart. I can just kind of visually see where it's at and guesstimate about the range which we're at. But I've done it a lot, and I know what my system takes. So generally, I will just go ahead and add because adding all of that nutrition, all those nutrients, is going to greatly reduce the pH in your system to very, very, very acidic. So I want to raise the pH, and what I have here, it's a pH plus. It's one that I make myself. It's basically a highly concentrated soda ash solution. Soda ash is sodium carbonate, not sodium bicarbonate, and it's just basically a natural way to increase the pH. Now I could go to the hydroponic store and spend you know, $50 on a quart of pH up, and it's potassium phosphate rather than or potassium carbonate rather than sodium carbonate. So I figure I use the sodium instead of potassium. It doesn't really do anything negative. I've seen it just flourish, and it controls the pH really, really well. And I'll put the recipe of how I make my own pH up. But I know roughly about 100 mils to 150 mils of the concentrate will get my pH right where I want it. All right, the last thing I do is I just top off the reservoir to make sure it's at the right level, so everything, the concentration of everything is right, and I just do it straight from the hose. Okay, I'll briefly go over the reservoir with you guys. So the main reservoir down here is just one of the 25-gallon storage containers I picked up at Costco, Home Depot, wherever. And then connected to it through a feed line, I have a 35-gallon trash bin that is set up with a drip valve. So as the volume of the reservoir decreases, the float valve will float down, and if it gets below a certain level, it'll drip out from the backup tank. So that'll last me a few days. I don't have to come out here every 8 hours and check on my reservoir. I know that I've got backup water. It'll decrease the concentration of the nutrients in there. So that's where I generally will shift to heavy feeding schedule. At the beginning of the season, right after I put stuff in, I'm at a higher watering frequency, maybe every hour, but I'm at a lower feeding because they're not consuming as much. There's not as much plant there to consume all of the nutrients. It won't be until they're about a foot or two high that I shift to full-blown nutrient cycle, which I'll generally do what I showed you today with the vegetative system, the vegetative amounts. I will do every other day or every third day. And that'll continue right through to the end, shifting over at the flowering stage to the flowering nutrient amounts. But I'll feed at the same schedule every couple of days just to make sure that they're getting fed as much as they need. And they'll go through it like that. Now, a lot of people do like total dissolved solids. They'll measure, you know, the electroconductivity of their reservoir. If you want to get that hyper specific, you totally can. I use pH as my guide because I know these guys are eating, and I tend to look at the plants and see what they're doing. If they're showing a lot of signs of deficiency or fungus or bacteria, I can adjust really quick, and you'll see the results very quickly in a matter of days. So that's how I do my nutrients and my feeding. It's pretty straightforward. It is a little bit time consuming, but using the system that I found, I've dialed it in to get really, really good results. Normally this time of the year I've already been harvesting a ton, but this year was really late, as you guys know, in planting. So you can see that I'm a couple months behind in my growth and in my harvesting. But I do have great healthy plants. I have the reservoir on now just to cycle everything through, and everything's looking good. I hope you guys learned anything. If you have any questions, go ahead, shoot me an email at info@infernofarmshotsauce.com or post a comment, and more than happy to help you out. Don't forget to like or subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next video. All right, take care.